We've all heard of them, fungal inoculants. It started off with mycorrhizal fungi, and now we're all the way up to Trichoderma. What exactly that is commercially available is worth your time in your garden? In this video, we are going to look at major commercially available inoculants you can grab, in what applications they make sense, and in what applications you are absolutely 110% wasting your money on. Now, the reason why I think I can successfully talk to you guys about this is because I have a Bachelor of Science in Soil Science. I've been working in the world of agriculture for over 10 years, and I've been gardening since I was 5 years old. And actually, more specifically, I have worked on an R&D level with fungal inoculants and bacterial inoculants. I actually have a very impersonal view on how a lot of these studies were done and kind of the results that they yielded and why. So number one is AMF, arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, and Trichoderma. So the way that these work is that they form a symbiosis with the plant roots, which then in turn help with nutrient absorption and actually mineralization of nutrients that is locked into the soil, can help with protection against pathogens that are soil-borne specifically. There was a study done in 2024 that looked at these types of beneficial fungi being added to the soil, and they did show an improvement in nutrient uptake, which in turn resulted in more biomass. Don't just jump onto these and grab them, because there is some nuance to whether or not they're going to work inside of your garden. Now, you guys are on this channel, so it means you love learning, and today's sponsor is very fittingly Skillshare. If you don't know what Skillshare is, it's an online learning platform where you can take different courses on a vast array of different hobbies, work structures, etc., and so forth.
The variety of categories could include things like art and illustration, animation, photography, graphic design, productivity. Some of my actual favorites are always going to be personal development or anything that helps with my workflow, whether that's Excel, PowerPoint, using AI, you name it. A very recent course that I did, as an example, is Excel, the Real World. Gain the basic skills for Microsoft Excel. I had to do a whole bunch of different reports, and I needed to crunch some data. And this course actually allowed me to do that. Had a little bit of a takeaway for homework, and it was insightful, helping me to crunch those numbers a little bit quicker. The first 500 people to click my link or scan the QR code that's up on the screen will receive 20% off their first year of Skillshare. If you are not part of the 500 people, or you just want to give it a shot without signing up, you can get a 7-day free trial along with a 30-day money-back guarantee.
So whether you're trying to further your career or you're trying to master a hobby, Skillshare is the place to do it. Skillshare, thank you for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to the science. And what we're concerned about when we're talking about commercially available options is their efficacy. So their truthfulness to how they perform in your garden outside of their natural habitats. Rhizophagus irregulalis is actually one of the most common versions of mycorrhizal fungi that we find in the commercially available products. And then for Trichoderma-based products, we actually don't see these very often for the purpose of nutrient capture and that, but we actually do see them predominantly for biological pest control, similar to like how we use nematodes and that sort of thing. So when we're looking at commercially available products, we actually want to break down first what type of garden you have, specifically an annual or a perennial garden. If we're talking an annual garden, we have continual disruption of the soil. Even if it's a no-till garden, there's still some disruption of that soil, and that disruption is in and around that soil root zone. So it will destroy that hyphae and the colonization that is achieved. So therefore, you would want a variety that is very aggressive at colonization compared to something that you would use in a perennial garden or in an orchard, which may establish a little bit slower. Scenarios where it also doesn't make any sense to actually add mycorrhizal fungi is in environments that have excessive levels of fertilizer. And I'm not just talking conventional fertilizers, I am talking organic nutrient as a whole. The symbiotic relationship that is formed doesn't just happen blindly out of nowhere. It actually happens because of stress and absence of something that needs to be present. And in many cases, that means the nutrients. So if there is nutrients available, what we tend to see is that the hyphae can't establish due to these higher fertilization rates. The symbiosis also is not achieved, and that has to do with the fact that the plant isn't needing or wanting that symbiotic relationship. So if you are a person that is adding a lot of conventional fertilizers, or if you're a person that is doing a no-dig with straight compost as an example, or you're doing a lot of root-placed compost and manure mixes, you may choose not to go this route because you can dump them in, but those spores are just going to lay dormant because there's nothing signaling to them that it's time to grow. The next factor that plays in is actually that the variety or the species of fungi has to be able to achieve a symbiosis with that plant. So we have endo and ecto mycorrhizal fungi, for example, and they actually only produce kind of this symbiosis with very specific types of plants. So for example, if you were going to go plant a tomato and you're thinking to yourself, I don't use a lot of fertilizer or I want to use no fertilizer, I want something that establishes quickly. What you need to do is you need to search for mycorrhizal fungi that form symbiosis with tomato, petunia, whatever the case is, because you don't want to waste your money on a mycorrhizal fungi that has one species of fungi, only to find out that the symbiosis connection isn't there and can't be formed. Keep in mind that there can be loose formations and really intense formations. It can come up that, yes, it does form a formation, but it may be weak or not as aggressive, and it has to be under very specific conditions. Now, I do have a website. I don't talk about it very often, but it's more of like practical use, and I do have a list of different inoculants on it and what species are available in each inoculant. So you can go check that out. It may be something to benefit from. If you choose to go with inoculants, Trichoderma is much faster at actually forming this symbiosis relationship or just forming in general. We're talking days, whereas mycorrhizal can be weeks, months, and can continue for years. So in my opinion, I think in an annual bed, you're best off just using the Trichoderma. If you are talking orchards or perennial gardens or something long-term, then that is when you would add that mycorrhizal fungi. Now, with both of these, there are very specific conditions that need to be met for us to encourage the colonization of this fungus, and that is high levels of moisture, some organic material, usually somewhere around the 30 to 50% by volume. So that would be peat all the way to compost and manures if you wanted, kind of mixed in the area that we are inoculating. And then I think this is just logical, but avoid fungicides. And that's, again, organic or inorganic because they just blindly kill all fungi. That's not very specific to anything. And so things like sulfur, as an example, can and will harm the establishment of these. The cases where I would absolutely never use a mycorrhizal fungi or even a trichoderma would be a space where I know I have issues with powdery mildew and I will need to treat that powdery mildew in the future. The world of cucumbers and squash, I will not apply this because it just simply does not make sense. I am applying sulfur, I am applying milk, all of these things that do destroy fungi. And so why waste my money? Cases when I have used it are with my tomato beds that are purely tomato beds, and I've used trichoderma. I also have used mycorrhizal fungi and suggested mycorrhizal fungi to anyone who is putting in trees, shrubbery, or perennials, because it does, when the soil is not disturbed, it does make a big difference long term. The long and short of it is if you can understand fungus and how it works in the soil, you can leverage that knowledge to give you an actual prescription, if you can, specific to your garden that makes sense and will work. I don't want you guys wasting money on something that won't work. So if you have any questions or you're unsure as to what you should be using, feel free to DM me on Instagram and I will just tell you exactly what you need to know. Just tell me what you want to grow and where you're growing it. Container gardeners, I'm going to say, regardless of what you're putting in, probably trichoderma is going to be your only option. And even then, I probably wouldn't waste my money. But if you really are, bent on doing it, then trichoderma is going to be the answer. The raised bed guys and the in-ground bed guys, that is going to heavily differ pending soil type, what you're growing, etc., and so forth. But I want to thank you guys for watching. I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.